Okay, so this is the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. We're in Sefer Ahavah, the Book of Love. We're in Hilchot, Tefillin, Mezuzah, in Sefer Torah, so Perek Dalet, chapter 4. Where should tefillin be placed? Tefillin of the head or placed on the crown, which is above the hairline, opposite the face, namely the soft place where the infant's brain can be felt. They should be carefully placed in the center so that they are in line with the point between the eyes. The knot of the tefillin of the head should be at the top of the back of the neck where the skull ends. The tefillin of the arm should be bound on the left arm, on the bicep, which is the muscle that stands out on the upper arm between the shoulder joint and the elbow. This way, when one holds one's upper arm to his ribs, the tefillin will be facing his heart. In fulfillment of the verse, it says, "In these words shall be, etc., upon your heart." One who puts the tefillin of the arm on his palm or puts the tefillin of the head on his forehead, one who puts the tefillin of the arm on his palm or puts the tefillin of the head on his forehead has acted in a heretical manner. One who makes his tefillin round as a nut has fulfilled no mitzvah at all. A left-handed person puts tefillin on his right arm, which is considered his left. But if he is ambidextrous, he should put on tefillin on his left arm, which is every person's left. The place where tefillin are to be bound and placed were learned by oral tradition transmitted from Moshe Rabbeinu. The lack of tefillin on the head does not prevent binding tefillin of the arm, and the lack of tefillin of the arm does not prevent placing tefillin of the head, for they are two mitzvot, each independent of the other. How does one recite the blessing on them? On the tefillin of the head, one recites the blessing, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us concerning the mitzvah of tefillin. On the tefillin of the arm, one recites the blessing, and this is preceded by Baruch, etc. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, basically, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to put on tefillin. When does one do so? If he put on only one of them, when does one do so? Okay, so it says if he put on only one of them, but if one put on both of them, he should recite a single blessing, and that being to put on tefillin, and should first bind the tefillin of the arm and then put on the tefillin of the head. When removing them, one first removes the tefillin of the head and then removes the tefillin of the arm. One who recites the blessing to put on tefillin and bound the tefillin on his arm may not engage in conversation, even to respond to his teacher's greeting, until he places the tefillin of the head. If one does converse, it constitutes a transgression. He must recite a second blessing, quote, concerning the mitzvah of tefillin, and then put on the tefillin of the head. One must recite the blessing on tefillin each time he puts them on, even if he has removed them and donned them 100 times in a day. Regarding all commandments, one recites the blessing before performing them. Therefore, one must recite the blessing on the tefillin of the arm after putting it on the bicep before binding it, for binding it is the performance of the mitzvah. When one removes his tefillin to put them away in the container, he should not place the tefillin of the arm on the bottom and the tefillin of the head on the top. For when he intends to don them, he will first touch the tefillin of the head, and that will result in his leaving it and taking out the tefillin of the arm. For one does not don the tefillin of the head before the tefillin of the arm, and it is forbidden to leave one mitzvah and bypass it in favor of another mitzvah. Rather, a mitzvah that comes to one's hand should be what he first occupies himself with. Therefore, one should place the tefillin of the hand on top so that he touches it and dons them in order. A container that was intended for storing tefillin and was in fact used for their storage has become consecrated and may not be used for mundane purposes. If one intended it for use but never actually stored his tefillin in it, or casually stored tefillin in it without specific intention, it does not become consecrated and remains mundane as it was before. It is forbidden to suspend the tefillin either by a strap or by the tefillin itself, but one may suspend the bag in which the tefillin are stored. The time for putting on tefillin is by day and not by night, as it states, day by day. The statute referred to here as the mitzvah of the tefillin, so too Shabbos and holidays are not the time for tefillin, as it states, and they shall be unto you as a sign. And Shabbos and holidays are themselves a sign. When is the time to place them? From the hour that one can see his fellow from a distance of 4 cubits and recognize him until sunset. One who put on tefillin before sunset and was still wearing them when it became dark may even leave them on all night. But this is not intended for public instruction. Rather, they are taught not to leave their tefillin on, and rather to remove them at sunset. One who first puts on tefillin only after sunset has transgressed a negative commandment, as it states, "And you shall observe the statute at its appointed time, day by day." If one was on the road with tefillin on his head, and the sun set, he should place his hand upon them until he arrives home, and should then remove them. If one was sitting in a study hall on Friday with tefillin on his head, and Shabbos began, he should place his hand upon them until he arrives home, and should then remove them. If there is a structure near the city wall where they can be kept safe, he should place them there. One who does not remove his tefillin after sunset, because he has no place to keep them safe, and keeps them on for their safekeeping, it is permitted to do so. Anyone who is exempt from reciting the Shema is exempt from tefillin. A minor who knows how to guard his tefillin, his father should purchase tefillin for him in order to train him in the mitzvahs. One who suffers from an intestinal malady, and anyone who cannot look after his bowels without encountering distress is exempt from tefillin, while anyone who is ritually impure is obligated to wear tefillin, just like ritually pure people. One who is uncomfortable or one who is upset and is not calm is exempt from tefillin. Or one who puts on tefillin may not let his mind be distracted from them. Kohanim, while performing the service, and Levites, while reciting the song atop the podium, and Israelites at the time they stand to observe the Beit HaMikdash service, are exempt from prayer and tefillin. One must frequently touch his tefillin as long as they are on him, so that his mind is not distracted from them for even a moment, for their sanctity is greater than the sanctity of the zitz, which is the name of God on the Kohen Gadol's forehead. For the zitz has only one sacred name of God on it, while these have the ineffable name written on them 21 times in the tefillin of the head, and 21 times, or an equal number, in the tefillin of the arm. 21 and 21 is 42. And it reminds me of the 42-letter name of God. But anyway, so continuing, the tefillin require a clean body like that of Elisha, who was especially careful regarding this mitzvah. And we must take care that he passes no flatulence while they are on him. Therefore, one may not sleep in them, neither regular sleep nor a casual nap, unless he covers them with a cloth and does not have a woman with him, in which case he may nap in them. How does one do so? One places his head between his knees and sits and sleeps, for this is not regular sleep. If one's tefillin were wrapped in his hands, he may sleep with them, even regular sleep. One may only eat a casual meal in them. But if one goes in for a regular meal, he must remove them and place them on his table until he washes his hands after the meal, and may then put them on and may then recite the grace after meals while wearing them. If one is wearing tefillin and needs to use the lavatory or the bathroom, he may not put his tefillin in holes in a wall adjacent to the public domain and then enter the lavatory, lest they be taken by wayfarers. What can one do? Even if one only needs to urinate, one should remove his tefillin at a distance of 4 cubits, roll them up in his garment like a Torah scroll, and hold them in his right hand facing his heart. One should first make sure that the strap does not extend a handbreadth beyond his hand, and may then enter to relieve himself. Upon exiting, one should distance himself 4 cubits from the lavatory and then put them on. To what does this apply? To a regular bathroom where droplets do not spray on him, and he will therefore not attempt to clean his garments as he holds tefillin. But a makeshift lavatory one may not enter with his tefillin even when they are covered, but must rather remove them and give them to a friend for safekeeping. Even in a regular bathroom, urine does not fully exit the body. That is, a person doesn't allow it to fully exit unless he sits down, for fear of droplets falling close to his garments. And if there is a loose, absorbent earth there, even when standing, if it is a hard place, he should stand on an embankment so that droplets do not spray on him. If one was wearing tefillin and needed the lavatory even as evening approaches, and will not have enough time to put them back on after exiting the lavatory, he may not enter the lavatory until they are rolled up in his hand, even to urinate in a permanent lavatory. What should he do then? One should remove them and place them in their special pouch. If it is the size of a handbreadth, or in a container which is not their pouch, even if it is not the size of a handbreadth, and should then hold the pouch in hand and enter the lavatory. So too, if one needs a lavatory at night, one should place them in a pouch and hold the pouch in his hand and then enter. And this is what we have common today as a pouch for our tefillin, and we also have cases for them. because it's important in some cases that they be placed inside of a container, inside of a case. So, but I'll continue. If one forgot and entered the lavatory while wearing tefillin, he must place his hand on them until he finishes the first flow, and then exit and remove the tefillin, and then re-enter and perform all his duties. For if one stops in middle of the first flow, whether feces or urine, he might become prone to sickness, which could lead to great danger. If one forgot and had relations while wearing tefillin, he should not hold on to the strap or the box until he washes his hands. He must wash his hands because they are busy. One who enters a bathhouse in the place where people stand clothed, he may put on tefillin, while in the place where some people will stand naked and some dressed, one need not remove his tefillin, but nor can one put on tefillin there. In a place where people stand naked, one must remove his tefillin and certainly may not put them on in the first place. One may not walk through a cemetery while wearing tefillin on his head, nor walk within 4 cubits of a dead person or a grave. One must remove his tefillin until he is 4 cubits away. One may not put on tefillin until his nakedness is covered and he has donned his clothes. One who carries a burden on his head must remove the tefillin of the head until the person lowers his burden. Even a kerchief or a handkerchief may not be put on a head wearing tefillin, but one may wrap his turban atop his tefillin. In a room which has tefillin or a Torah scroll inside it, one may not have relations therein until removing them, or when you put them in a container and place that container in another container, which is not their usual cover. So if the container was prepared for them, even 10 containers, one inside the other, are considered like one vessel. If one places them one vessel inside another vessel, it is permitted to place them beneath one's head, between the pillow and the mattress, where not facing his head, in order to safeguard them, even if his wife is with him in bed. The sanctity of tefillin is a great sanctity, for as long as tefillin are on a person's head and on his arm, he will be modest and will maintain awe, and will not be drawn after jest and idle talk, and will not think wicked thoughts, but rather will clear his heart for words of truth and justice. Therefore, one must endeavor to have tefillin on him all day long, for that is their preferred mitzvah. They said of Rav, student of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, that all his life he was never seen walking 4 cubits without Torah study, without tzitzit, and without tefillin. Although their preferred mitzvah is to wear them all day, it is especially important to wear them during prayer. The sages stated, one who recites Kiryat Shema, or the recitation of the Shema, without tefillin is considered as if he speaks false testimony against himself. One who does not put on tefillin transgresses 8 positive commandments. For in the 4 portions we are commanded regarding tefillin of the head and regarding the tefillin of the arm. One who is accustomed to wearing tefillin will live a long life, as it states, Hashem is upon them, so that they might live.